If you're going to teach adults, you have to get them engaged. You got to get them connected. I mean, sorry. I have a tendency to move, and then I stand right in front of the screen. Nobody can see it. I'll try to stay out of the way. But you've got to get people engaged. So the first of her, let me see if this works. It didn't work. First of her principles that I want to talk about is sound relationships. Sound relationships for learning involve respect, safety, open communication, listening, and humility. How do we demonstrate disrespect often when we teach? What are some ways that you have seen people be disrespected in a teaching setting?
As teachers or as listeners?
Sure, either way.
Oh.
Either way.
I don't know, not value what people have to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
No patience.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's a tendency, you just want to kind of say, teachers will expect students to just be like, okay, and any question or, well, why is that, is not usually accepted. It's
sure.
Shut down.
Yeah, even threatened by questions. Yeah. Yeah. Open questions. We'll talk a little bit more about open questions versus closed questions and leading questions a little bit later on. I'll talk about some of those things. But open questions invite people to listen and to speak and to engage in one another. And we need to be really sensitive in this whole area of respect and sound relationships in the area of culture. It's interesting. We live in a very unique part of the world. Almost everybody in this community, let me say it differently, almost everybody in this building are white. When I go down to Texas, I'm in the middle of a doctoral program right now. When I go down to Texas, out of all of my classmates, I think there are 2 of us that are white. It's fascinating discussions that we have. But it's made me much more aware of some things about culture. If you walk down the street in Bemidji, there's a lot of Native Americans. And somehow we haven't engaged them at all. And what's really interesting is that twice already this morning, I've heard statements made totally in innocence. Totally in innocence. That if the wrong people had been sitting in the room, would have been deeply offended. Because we weren't culturally sensitive. And we need to be careful about this. Because the truth of the matter is we don't know what's happening in the lives of the people in our little group, even if they're people that we've been with for the last 30 years. And so, effective teaching is built on sound relationships, and sound relationships are built on respect and humility. Probably one of the key attitudes that a teacher needs to have is the security to be able to say, I'm okay no matter what people think or say about me. Now, you can use a lot of different terms for that. I call it finding my security and my significance in Christ. And that leads to a level of humility that allows people to ask hard questions and not be threatened by that. And it enables me to I'll have people disagree with me and not be threatened by that. And so if we are going to be effective in leading interactive, engaging dialogue in a teaching setting, we got to deal with that first, and that's between me and God. I mean, it's a growing thing, but we need to deal with that whole issue of humility. It's not about me. It's not about being right. It's not about being the best teacher. Dr. Howard Hendricks used to say to his students, "Don't believe your press reports." And what he meant by that was this. Every preacher at some point in time has had somebody go out of the church service, shake his hand and say, "Pastor, that was the best sermon I've ever heard in my life. You're the best preacher in the world." Or something along those lines. And you believe that, and you're setting yourself up for trouble. What they really mean is, "Pastor, God used you to speak to my heart today." And that ought to humble us. But when we start thinking it's about us, we get in trouble, and we actually destroy the relationships that we're trying to develop. Next slide. Immediacy. I clearly put these in a different order than I have them in my notes. So immediacy, and which is what Cindy, right? Christy. I started with a C. I'm sorry. I see you every day and I still don't know your name. Christy was talking about teaching what's really useful to learners. If I don't see any value in it, I'm not going to sit there very long. Or I'm just not going to come back. Is what we are teaching in our Bibles valuable? Yeah. But are we doing it in a way that they see the value? It needs to be a sense of immediacy. It needs to be touching my life. It's one thing, and they were talking about cultural and generational differences in the room next door earlier. I don't know if you were in that group or not, but one of the things Justin Tamagala said, the thing I appreciate about the older generation is that when they commit to something, they're committed to it. I mean, if you ask them to pass out bulletins and they say, "Yes, I'll pass out bulletins," they'll be there every Sunday passing out bulletins until they die. And the reality is, if they could, they'd show up the next day because they said they would do it. But that generation also was taught, these are some things that you need to learn because someday you'll need to know them. And they said, "Oh, okay. Okay, that's what we said, right? Oh, okay." That's not so true anymore. There needs to be a sense that this is in fact valuable to learn. There needs to be an immediacy to that. Yeah?
Just a personal example.
You're pointing at me.
We were talking the other day, and we got talking about math. And she says, "Well, what do I need to know that for?" She says, "I've never used it again in my life." We were talking about pi.
Yeah, it was Pi Day the other day.
Yeah. And she says, "Well, I've never used it once in my life. Why should I need to know that?" A little bit later, so I was explaining it to her. A little bit later, we were talking about cooking. And I always get confused about how many cups are in a quart. And she says, "Well, you know that." And I says, "Well, I don't do the cooking." She said, "Well, you're asking me about it now." She says, "That's something important you need to know. You don't need to know about pie, but you need to know how important." So it's
there you go. That's right.
Useful.
You don't need to know pie, but you need to know how many cups are in a quart. Let's go to the next one. Another one is assuming new rules of dialogue, embracing the death of the professor. I think I skipped one. Did I skip praxis?
Yes, you did, but it will eventually show up and nobody talks.
Well, maybe it'll come. Let's hope it comes because otherwise I'm in trouble. Okay, so yeah, that's why I'm all confused now because it didn't show up. Assuming the rules. We have viewed teaching and training from the perspective that the professional walks in with all the information. We open the lid, he pours in all the information, some of it leaks out, but we hope we retain a little. And then he goes away. But what we need to be moving into, if we are going to really be effective, is understanding that the role of the teacher is not so much about being the one with all the answers, but being the one who knows how to ask the right questions. Because all of us have something to bring to the table. We all have something to add to the discussion, and we learn from each other. And it's fascinating what happens when dialogue starts happening. Somebody says something that raises an issue the teacher hadn't even thought about, but really needs to be addressed. And it's so helpful. Somebody else has an insight that the teacher never has experienced. And it's helpful. We're working through a text of scripture and somebody sees something that the teacher didn't see. It's an observation that he missed. I have a class that I teach. I teach it probably once or twice a year. I've been teaching it since the early 2000s, and so I can't tell you how many times I've taught it. And it's fascinating that every single time I teach it, somebody asks a question and makes an observation that didn't occur to me. And that nobody else has asked yet. It's just fascinating. So we bring that all to the table. Now, that doesn't mean that the teacher doesn't have information to communicate. But engaging people in that process becomes very helpful. Let's go to the next one. Teamwork, learning together. None of us is as smart as all of us. Kenneth Blanchard said that.